The twin suns of Relora Prime bled copper and violet across the horizon as Kaela Veyrin trudged back toward her dwelling. Her people, tall, sleek-skinned, silver-eyed, were the apex of genetic perfection, at least according to the elders. They valued symmetry, grace, and power above all else. A Reloran female was judged for her strength of lineage as much as her intelligence, and the most esteemed bloodlines produced offspring with flawless skin patterns, keen reflexes, and mental acuity that rivaled the planet's AI oracles. Kaela had none of that. Too angular in the jaw, skin pigments too muted, reflexes average at best, at least by Reloran standards. Her telepathic range was weak, barely enough to sense emotions rather than communicate in full thoughts like others her age. She was, as her genetic assessment score put it bluntly, minimally viable. No house would offer her a breeding contract. No one wanted her genes. At 22 cycles, she was already drifting toward what they called inactive status, a polite way of saying she lived childless, her lineage extinguished, existing on the margins of society. And today had been worse than usual. A group of males at the communal arena had been discussing upcoming pairing trials. When she passed, one of them chuckled telepathically, loud enough for everyone to feel it. Not her. She's barely even Reloran by the look of her. Maybe some off-worlder will want scraps. Laughter. Snickers. A few pitying glances. Kaela had pretended not to hear. But inside, she crumbled. Hashtag the arrival of humans. Humans had arrived on Relora only 2 cycles ago, their starships cutting across the void with shocking speed. They were smaller than Rilorans, less physically imposing, yet oddly confident. Where Rilorans were elegant and poised, humans were chaotic, loud, expressive. And for reasons Kaela couldn't fathom, the Council had agreed to trade cultural envoys. Humans studied Reloran customs, Rilorans learned Terran ways, which was why Kaela, to her eternal irritation, found herself assigned as cultural liaison to Ethan Cole, one of the Terran engineers stationed at the new orbital station. He was everything Reloran males were not, broad-shouldered but not towering, quick to laugh, hair always a little messy despite the strict station regulations. He spoke far too much, smiled far too easily, and unlike Rilorans, he talked rather than used telepathy. At first, Kaela thought it crude. Now, she wasn't so sure. Words had texture, tone, warmth. She hadn't realized how starved she was for warmth until Ethan arrived. Hashtag, not breeding material. The insult from the arena followed Kaela like a shadow as she met Ethan at the edge of the crystalline gardens that bordered the city. He grinned when he saw her, as he always did. Hey, Kaela, I was starting to think you ditched me. She folded her arms, defensive. I was delayed. By what? She hesitated. Rilorans didn't share personal humiliations, especially not with off-worlders. But something about Ethan's open expression made the words slip out. Some males think I'm not suitable for breeding contracts, she said stiffly. Not good material. Ethan blinked. Wait, people actually say that? Out loud. They didn't say it to me directly. She paused. But yes. Wow, he said flatly. What a bunch of idiots. Kaela stared at him. Idiots. No one had ever spoken of Reloran males like that. Not publicly. Ethan shook his head. For what it's worth, I think you're kind of amazing, actually. She froze. Amazing? No one had ever called her that. Not her instructors. Not her peers. Certainly not potential breeding partners. You think I'm worthy? She asked before she could stop herself. Ethan frowned. Worthy? Kaela, you're smart, you're funny. Well, when you're not pretending not to be, and you got this whole elegant warrior vibe going on. I don't know what passes for beauty around here, but on Earth, you'd stop traffic. She had no idea what stop traffic meant, but his tone, low, earnest, like he was sharing a secret, made her chest feel strangely light. Hashtag the first spark. Over the next several weeks, Kaela found herself replaying that moment more times than she cared to admit. Ethan never brought up again. He didn't act like he'd given her some grand gift. He just treated her like she mattered. When they studied human literature together, he asked her opinion like it was valuable. When they walked through the city, he matched her pace even though his shorter legs should have slowed him. When she struggled with a Terran idiom, he explained it without laughing. Reloran males had always made her feel less. Ethan made her feel seen. And that was dangerous. Because Rilorans didn't form attachments outside breeding contracts. Love, if it existed at all, was secondary to genetics and lineage. Yet here she was, lying awake in her dwelling at night, hearing his laugh in her memory, wondering what his hand might feel like if she reached for it. Hashtag the Festival of Suns. It all came to a head during the Festival of Suns, a yearly celebration where pairing announcements were made beneath the twin star convergence. Kaela hadn't planned to attend. Why watch others secure contracts she'd never have? But Ethan insisted. Come on, he said. You can't hide in that lab forever. Besides, I want to see this whole twin sons thing. Sounds romantic. Romantic. Another Terran word that made her pulse spike. So she went, the plaza ablaze with color, banners snapping in the warm wind. Crystal sculptures reflecting twin rays of copper and violet light. Couples stood proudly as contracts were read aloud. Genetic compatibilities announced with ceremonial precision. Kaela stayed at the edges, trying not to feel hollow. Then one of the arena males, the same one who'd mocked her weeks ago, strode past with his new partner. He smirked when he saw her. Still alone, Kaela? Perhaps the humans will take pity on you. Ethan, standing beside her, turned sharply. Hey, he said coldly. Back off. The male raised a brow. This is Reloran business. Off-worlder. Yeah. Ethan shot back. Well, from where I'm standing, Kaela's worth 10 of you pompous clowns. Gasps. A few laughs. The male flushed a deep violet, Reloran embarrassment. Kaela's heart pounded. No one had ever defended her like that. Hashtag, 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 because you're beautiful. They left the festival early, slipping away into the quiet of the Crystal Gardens. Kaela finally asked a question burning through her chest. Why do you do that? Do what? Ethan looked genuinely confused. Defend me. Say things like I'm worth something. Ethan stopped walking. Because you are. She shook her head. You don't understand. My people, they value perfection. I'm not perfect. I'm not even desirable. Ethan stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that she could feel his warmth in the cool night air. Kaela, he said softly, back on Earth, people don't fall in love with genetics charts. They fall in love with people. And you? You're brave. You're kind. You got this fire in you that doesn't care what anyone thinks. That's beautiful. Beautiful. The word hit harder than she expected. No breeding assessor. No genetic oracle. No Reloran male had ever used it for her. Her throat tightened. You really think so? Ethan smiled faintly. I don't say things I don't mean. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag a choice. The next day, Kaela did something unthinkable. She applied for off-world cultural exchange, not as a liaison, but as a volunteer colonist for the joint Terran-Reloran project on Vega 4. When the council questioned her decision, she told them the truth. I want to go where my worth isn't measured in breeding scores. Some were scandalized. Others merely looked confused. But Kaela didn't care. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag epilogue. Vega 4. Months later, beneath alien stars far from Relora Prime, Kaela stood beside Ethan on the soil of Vega, for as the first human Reloran colony took shape, she was no one's genetic disappointment here. She was Kaela Veyrin, linguist, explorer, pioneer. And when Ethan reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers, she didn't hesitate. Because sometimes all it took was one person's belief, one simple human compliment, to rewrite everything she thought she knew about herself.